there, storytellers! Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my January wrap-up. The first month of 2021 is just about over. We got a couple days left, but here's all the books I read this month. So I thought I'd kick things off with a couple just general stats. I read a grand total of 8 books for a whopping 2,699 pages read. That blew my mind. I have never actually counted up the amount of pages I've read for books before, so that was kind of crazy. The first 2 books in January that I finished were Heartstopper Volume 1 and 2 by Alice Oseman. These are contemporary graphic novels. They're little romances, very cute LGBT plus romances. They are adorable stories. I gave them both 4 stars. I enjoyed them a lot. I thought the relationship development was organic, and since that is the focus of the stories, I thought it was great. There was not that sort of insta-love. I mean, it happened pretty quickly because you're reading it in graphic novel format, but it's expressed very clearly that it's a span of months that they first become friends, and then they take the time to just be friends for a while before they start to acknowledge the fact that they might feel a little bit more for each other, and then they progress from there. I did do a review of these 2, so go ahead and click the video up there if you haven't seen it. It'll give you a little bit more in-depth thoughts and reviews from me on them. But like I said, I did give them both 4 stars, and I enjoyed them enough to go on to the 3rd volume, which I will get to in a second. But next I got to The Camelot Betrayal by Kiersten, which is the 2nd book in the Camelot Rising series. This is obviously a fantasy. It is a retelling of Arthurian legend where we focus on the character of Guinevere, only in this series, Guinevere is not all she appears to be. In fact, she's more than she appears to be, and in this 2nd installment, we learn that she might even be more than that. It's hard for me to explain without totally spoiling some of the biggest plot reveals in these novels, so I don't want to do that for you. It was just so well done. I absolutely love Kiersten White's execution of this story. I definitely get all of the feelings that I like to get when reading adaptations of Arthurian legend. It makes me feel warm and adventurous. I mean, Arthurian legend is that ultimate sort of good versus evil battle. We like to view things as black and white, but they're very often more complicated than that. And this series is just full of nuance. She always leaves you on a really good cliffhanger. And by good, I mean it just, it's so frustrating. I really want the next installment, but it's not here yet. So I have to wait. But I gave this one a 5 out of 5. I loved it. I had so much fun reading it. I kind of just flew through it. I remember flying through the 1st installment, and I did worry, because I often do when I'm going along with the series as it's coming out and not binging it, that I might not remember the 1st book very well, but I felt like she recapped really well without it feeling repetitive and dry, and it just helped pull you back in. So this one I thought was just really well done. I think I mentioned The Camelot Betrayal I did on audiobook, but if not, I did. It was an audiobook and it was fantastic. And now we get to Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman, which I read online. She actually does publish the installments to the Heartstopper story on several different online platforms, and I liked the first 2 enough and was curious enough about what was going to happen to these characters that I felt like, okay, I'm just gonna jump in. I see it online, it's free, I might as well read it. So she sort of numbers her pages in the comics she posts online, and I did a little corresponding to the page number count on Amazon for Volume 3, and there was some math involved, but I figured out that I have at least finished Volume 3, and technically I've started Volume 4, I think, but I'm not going to count that until I actually finish it because I am considering buying this series. Volume 3 definitely has more mature themes and content in it. Definitely be warned if you are someone who is sensitive to mental health and eating disorder struggles. Just beware that it's something that is part of this plot line, and it is something to have in mind when you're going into it. I don't feel it's particularly graphic in its representation, but it is talked about. One of the characters does struggle with his mental health and his eating, so it's something that is progressing. It's something that's going to be part of Volume 4 a lot, I believe. but mostly in volume 3, they're in Paris, and the other character is noticing his boyfriend is having these troubles while he's dealing with the fact that he is trying to come to terms with his own sexuality and come out and announce their relationship to the world. You know, there's this balance of one of them is technically out and he has these other struggles, and the other one isn't out, but he's struggling to come out and help his boyfriend at the same time. So like I said, it's a lot more mature and nuanced, and it is something to be aware of. That being said, I did like this installment just as much as the other two, another 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's a really cute story, and the more nuance and complexity that comes into it, the more I am drawn to continuing to read it. I can't speak to whether or not the mental health and eating disorder side of things is represented accurately, because I don't struggle with that issue myself, but if it is something you're worried about, maybe dig into it, do a little research on whether or not you feel it is properly represented or represented sensitively enough. The next book I got to in January was another audiobook, and it was called The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. So bear with me, because I struggle to put into words my thoughts and feelings on this book, because I have not encountered one like it before. And by that, I mean something about it is just so unique. And the premise is that this caseworker, who is sort of revered for being thorough and caring about these orphanages that he reviews, but also manages to be sort of distanced from them, is chosen to go and review this very sort of elusive, secluded orphanage. And I say orphanage because the orphans are children with magical abilities or extraordinary abilities, and very often they are put there because the world doesn't want to adopt them. The world doesn't want to welcome them into the fold. They are sort of viewed as outsiders and kept as such. But Lionel ends up being charmed by the children of this orphanage and its caretakers, and he sort of begins to question what he believes, what he's been told to believe, and whether or not this place that he's always sort of made his home and sort of made himself fit into is really the place he wants to be. It is a weird and whimsical and heartwarming story. The atmosphere and the feelings I got while reading the book were just really different, and it was something that sort of managed to make me feel lighthearted and transported. There's just something about it, and I highly, highly recommend it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read another graphic novel called Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker. This one was a supernatural / fantasy graphic novel that featured LGBT plus themes as well. It is about two characters, Tam and Nova, who were once friends when Tam used to live in the same New England town that Nova does, but they have sort of grown apart because Tam moved away. But the story kicks off with Tam returning, and Tam has a non-binary character, so they are coming to terms with that part of their identity, but also coming to terms with the fact that they are literally being hunted down by a group for a ritual. Oh, I forgot to mention that Tam is a werewolf. Nova, who is a witch and is raised by her grandparents, or her grandmothers, I should say. Tam is reluctant to tell Nova the extent of their situation because they don't want to endanger her life and her family's life in any way, but they have always sort of had a crush on Nova, and Nova has always had a crush on Tam, and so the two of them begin a relationship amongst all this drama. It was a very cute story. It was not something that I felt was wildly original, but the two characters were very cute. I liked their little relationship together. It wasn't something that I felt was a super exciting story. I was kind of left wanting more, so I only gave it a 3 out of 5. The next book I completed in January was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. To my memory, The Hobbit is the very first full-length novel of a fantasy variety that I have ever read. I remember my mom started to read it to me when I was like 6, and she would start reading, and my mom is somebody who, if you read before bed, she'll just pass out. So she would get tired and she'd want to stop, but I wanted to keep going, so I remember taking the time to sort of slowly read through the crazy elven dwarf pronunciations of words just because I was so enthralled with this story. So there was a lot of 6-year-old nostalgia packed into my brain, but I hadn't actually done a reread of it in many, many years, literally 20 years, because I'm now 26. So I haven't touched this book in 20 years. Well, I attempted to reread it way back at the beginning of my channel, but I didn't actually reread it. But this time I did actually go start to finish on this novel, and the nostalgia holds up, man. If you are unfamiliar with the tale of the Hobbit, it follows Bilbo Baggins as he is swept off on a journey with Thorin Oakenshield and company, pushed along by Gandalf the Grey. Bilbo is a Hobbit of the Shire, so he's used to comfort and home and happiness in simple times, and he's literally thrown into the world. Thorin and his company are trying to rescue their homeland and their treasure from the dragon Smaug, who has taken over the halls of the Dwarf Kingdom and made it his hoard. So they're traveling across the literal world. They're encountering all kinds of adventures along the way, and it's funny what I remembered and what I didn't. This is so well written. It's such a charming book. It's full of warm-hearted adventure, and it just makes me feel so good. I love this world. This is where my love of Tolkien's world started, and it holds up. Anyway, I think it's clear. 5 out of 5 stars. Nostalgia holds up. I love this novel. Love it. All right, last but not least is another audiobook, and that is Lifestyles of Gods and Monsters by Emily Roberson. This is a sort of reimagining of Greek mythology set in a contemporary reality TV show kind of setting, and it was fun. It follows our main character, Ariadne. In this novel, she is the keeper of the maze, and by that, I mean the maze of the Minotaur. She also starts up a romance with the Prince of Athens, who comes to help rescue the competitors going into the maze to fight the Minotaur. They're the people of his city. He doesn't want them dying, and he ends up being the one to sort of put an end to things. At first, Ariadne believes herself to be apart from the reality TV show lifestyle that her parents have created around the Minotaur competition, and her 2 older sisters also have a reality show of their own where they sort of are Kardashian-esque, where they're famous for being famous. Ariadne believes herself to be apart from this, and she later learns she's fairly complacent, and she's been doing what she's told this whole time and not questioning the truth of what's sort of being put on camera. She sort of falls into the trap of thinking, well, it's reality and they must be wanting to do it, so it is what it is and I don't have to be a part of it. And she realizes she's very much been a part of it, and she's been enabling this horrible system to continue. And the fun twist is the Minotaur is a little bit more complex of a character than you might first assume. So that's all I want to say on that one. But it was an interesting take. I liked the concept of it, and I did give it a 5 out of 5 because it was a really fun read for me. But I won't say there aren't flaws in it. We have major insta-love. We have Ariadne being complacent and whiny and kind of not that other girl kind of trope. She's not overly three-dimensional, if that makes sense. We know the 2 things she likes to do, and because she is unintentionally complacent and buries her head in the sand, she's really not the most likable of main characters, nor are any of the others. Actually, her one sister, Akala, is really written as somebody who presents as sort of airheaded and materialistic and hot, and that's all she is, but there's so much more to her, and she's actually a far more interesting character than Ariadne or really any of the others. Theseus is kind of boring. He's got daddy issues, and the Minotaur, like I said, is another more interesting character. So I wouldn't hate hearing Akala's story, but I don't think we're gonna get it. It didn't look like it was part of a series. Like I said, there are flaws to this book. It is by no means a perfect book, but I had a lot of fun reading it, which is why I was sort of lenient and gave it a 5 out of 5. But that is all 8 books that I finished in January of 2021. That is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by leaving a like down below. For now, I'm going to get going. If you want to keep up with me and all of my bookish adventures, you can go ahead and click the subscribe button, and you should definitely Ring the little bell so that you don't miss a beat. I post videos every Friday, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!